Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen W. Long. Welcome to The Writing Life. And, you know, I was thinking about the show today and thinking that if you at least periodically watch this show, or if you watch Caroline's show, which is literally literary, if you live locally and visit the Gallery at Ten Oaks, or now if you visit Mecca, McMinnville Center for the Arts, that art gallery, there's a good chance you've already met my guest for today. And so Mike Paull, you're primarily known for poetry, at least up till now, but you're kind of branching out into a new area.
Yeah, that's correct. As far as writing stories and children's books,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of a new thing for me. Yeah, poetry's been my main stay for a long time.
And you know, I just this second thought: have you collected your poems?
Yeah, as far as the book, the original, I published a book a couple years ago, and I was on here, and so that was part of them. But I've got quite a few since then.
Okay.
More just more poetry.
Sure.
So I've got enough for probably getting close to having another chapbook's worth. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I still enjoy the heck out of writing poetry.
Oh, I don't think you could say. I mean, in fact, later on, I think we're going to get a poem from here.
Oh yeah, there's a short little poem in the Porker book. So,
Okay.
Yeah, we'll read it. Yeah,
Okay.
Good idea.
So what's the motivation? What brought you to this book?
Well, it was a kind of a flash in a pan thing that happened one day. As you may know, sometimes ideas just come over.
You bet.
And in this case, I always wanted to write children's books from way long ago anyway, because I've got a habit of reading to my grandchildren and my children before that at bedtime.
Okay.
And a lot of times I wouldn't even use a book, I'd just spin a yarn. That's what my wife calls it. She goes, "You're pretty good at spinning yarns."
Right.
She loves them. In fact, she's like a kid too. She always wanted me to tell her stuff. So anyway, she said, "Mike, you got to write these down, and then maybe later you can make books out of them or whatever." So anyway, that's how I got inspired to do it. And then I had a story one day about a pig farmer in my brain. It just popped. And I wrote down the initial story. Probably took about 30 minutes or something, to sit and write the whole thing, 2 pages, or maybe more than that, So I can't remember how many. But anyway, and then over the years, I kind of revisit it, edit it a little bit, expand it, subtract from it. You know how that is. And then finally, I ended up with a story that I thought was good enough for and then I I read it to my granddaughter, and she said, "I love it, Pape." That's what she calls me. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, this could go somewhere. So then I thought, it's time to just see about putting it in a book form, and then that started the ball rolling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I learned something right this second. We hadn't got a chance really to talk about this, although you did introduce it at Mecca the other night. I assumed that this was sort of a recent flash that you had, wrote it down. I didn't know that the process took as long as I think you're describing.
Well, the original story was maybe years ago.
Really?
Yeah, and then it just laid around, I mean, I've got books at my house, notebooks, that probably this high, full of ideas. You know how it is. You got all this stuff laying around, and so I did see it quite often for a few years, and then all of a sudden I just decided to go full tilt with it.
Good, I'm glad.
Yeah, and also, of course, some of these groups and like the Terroir Festival, when I went there, and somebody turned me on to Gail Watson.
Oh yeah,
who then turned me on to Elizabeth Berg, who is the illustrator in the book.
I was going to ask about that because I've met Elizabeth.
Yep, and she is awesome, and she has done a really great job. I mean, the story is a good story that's fun to tell, and it has a moral, and it's for a kid, even for an adult, it's just kind of a fun story. But when you throw in some really nice art like that, then you got a winner right there. So.
Yeah, it reminds me of in cinema. There's the action on the screen, but then there's the soundtrack, there's the music. And I think about the illustration like that, that it enhances it, and maybe it guides you a little bit.
Right. Well, yeah, and me and Elizabeth, when she started illustrating, which was about a 4-month project by the time we went through it
Okay.
several times, she lives up in Newburgh area, and
Right.
so I would go to her house up there and to meet her at a coffee shop downtown Newburgh.
Sure.
And then we would bounce off each other. You know, I'd show her. Well, I gave her the original story, and then she showed me some drawings, and I then would say, well, it looks like we need to, you know, tweak this a little bit,
Okay.
because she would come up with drawings and say, how do you like this? And I
Right.
liked them all. I loved them. It's just that as an illustrator, sometime if I'm not there every day, or the writer and illustrator aren't
Right.
next to each other, then the illustrator goes off on a sort of her own idea. So you have to say, well, now, you know, I love
Yeah.
the idea, but it's not quite what I had in mind. So
Right.
we then come back in and start again, and so I had some drawings left over, and
Okay.
you know how that goes. So.
It reminds me, there's a couple of things that it reminds me of. One is in one of my critique groups, this is some years ago, one of my fellow students would get a critique, and she would say, that's a great idea, as you did to Elizabeth. That's a great idea. It's not for this book, but it's a great idea. So maybe you can use it, or maybe she can use it somewhere
Right.
else.
And you know, this story, I ran this story by a group that I'm sit in,
Okay.
which is Caroline's group, and
Sure.
I took this story down there. This was maybe a couple years ago, and after I found it and, you know, reread it and
Right.
developed it a little more, and I took it in there and I passed it out. Eight different people read it that night. I think there was 8 copies, and they all made some notes on it.
Right.
I took those home and I used a lot of those notes,
Yeah.
because you know, you write something and it's editors, you know, and I know that
Right.
editors are indispensable
Sure.
when it comes to writers, because you get involved and you just don't see every little thing that maybe can make the story better, you know, and other people see
yeah.
that.
We say it has to be on the page.
Right.
And years ago, I was in a group where a young lady was a science fiction writer. And I don't remember, it was something about going to the moon or something. And we said, like, where's the rocket ship? You know, how do they get there? Oh, well, and then she would tell us the backstory and what it looks like. Well, it's not on the page.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
and so, as you said, you know, as the author, you know what the image is in your head,
Right.
but it's got to be on the page.
Yeah, it does have to be there, and sometimes it doesn't hurt to have someone look at your stuff and say, hey,
Sure.
you know, you could add this in,
Right.
and then it would help the whole
Right.
the whole story. So.
One of the things that we run into in my group is a missed opportunity. So, you know, again, the author will write something, and I think it has to do with pacing sometimes, but then also how do you convey information. So there'll be a line that it's kind of a standalone line, and again, in our group, they'll just go on and not explore that. And I think sometimes you'll write something and somebody else will point out, boy, I have a question about that. Am I going to learn later? You know, is it a dramatic question that pulls me through the story
Right.
because I'm looking for the answer, or did you just dismiss it?
Right.
If that's the case, maybe you should address that now.
Yeah, maybe you should bring it up.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Can you give us like a synopsis of the book? What you said there's a moral.
Yeah, okay, that's right. And I could give you a synopsis. The story involves a pig farmer, and his name is Short and D Fast. No one knows what the D stands for.
Okay.
Okay. And the book is narrated by his pet dog,
Okay.
Jack. Jack is the dog, the farm dog.
Yeah.
So he's the narrator of the story, and he knows what the D stands for, but no one else does. But
Okay.
anyway, Short and Fast is a righteous guy, hard worker. Everyone likes him, but he has one bad habit. And if I tell you what it is, but anyway, the fact is...
We don't want to
is
spoil it.
Yeah, well, I don't want to spoil it, but that's all right. The fact is he sneaks up and scares people.
Oh, okay.
People don't appreciate being scared like
Sure,
that, you know.
sure.
And so it cracks him up. He laughs like crazy. So anyway, he goes through the book, and he does that, and the townspeople get sick of him and stuff. But anyway, his farm then is located in an area where they build a divided highway around the farm.
Okay.
Through no fault of his own, but he's got to keep the farm because what else is he going to do, right?
Right.
He's got to farm pigs. That's all he knows. So anyway, he's got to get the pigs to the market. So he tries to take the pigs to the market one time and waiting for the traffic to slow down to get a pig across just
Right.
to time it to see how long it takes. Well, then there's almost a car crash because the pig doesn't go very fast, right? He's calling the pig, hurry, hurry, suey,
Sure.
suey. And anyway, the pig slowly, and the cars come, and so there's almost this giant crash. And he's like, he can't even watch it. And then all of a sudden, he starts cracking up laughing because you know how it is. People laugh when somebody has an accident. You
Sure.
know, that's comedy, right?
Right,
So,
right.
so anyway, he then realizes that he has a severe problem, and he realizes that he should not be necessarily finding humor in somebody else's misfortune, which he almost kills the pig or he almost
Right.
kills people. So anyway, he learns his lesson, and the lesson is that, you know, don't always do bad stuff and find it to be funny.
Right.
And so
You
there's
know
a moral.
what that reminds me of? So I think it was in the 50s, maybe even earlier, but I think the 50s. There were a series of short clips, movie clips, and about Mr. Bumbles. Does that ring a bell?
Bumbles.
And-
I've heard of it, but I can't necessarily relate to it.
Well, these were school kids, and I suspect, you know, 4th, 5th grade something. And the lesson was, don't be a Mr. Bumbles.
Oh.
So the two kids would be put in a situation, and Mr. Bumbles would respond inappropriately.
Oh.
The lesson, I think, is, and it's just one example of the farmer, is respect for other people.
That's it. That's a prime lesson. And
Yeah.
at the end of the book, when you're reading this book to your grade schooler, that's
Yeah.
probably for grade school age kids, you
Okay.
know. I think the parents or the grandparents or whoever's reading will enjoy the book, but also the child will, it'll be one of those books where you could read it over and over, you know, a few times even. Just,
Sure.
I have the same thing when I've been reading to my kids and grandkids. We had certain books that they really enjoyed, so I think it's on that level. So
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then keep it around and read it to the next kid that comes up, you know. So
Yeah.
and they learn something from it. That's the most important part of it, I think. So,
Well, sure. You're talking about repetition. I had read something, because I have several grandkids.
yeah,
And
you'll need this book.
yeah. So Bear in the Blue House, I don't know if you know that children's program.
Yeah.
They did something really unusual, and Sesame Street was praised for its connection with children, and then Bear in the Blue House came after. And one of the things that they did that was really untraditional is repeat the same program every day for a week. And I don't know who broadcast this, a network, let's say, said, well, this is ridiculous, it'll never work. And the opposite was true, because kids like repetition. They like to anticipate what's coming.
Oh yeah.
And so the familiarity where we might say, geez, you know, I read this already.
Yeah.
It's different with them.
Right.
They like knowing, so anticipating what's coming.
Yeah, I remember my kids saying, yeah, I know what's going to happen, and, you know, let's do this one because this is what's going to happen. They actually thrived on the idea.
They have a favorite book or
Yeah,
something.
they knew what was going to happen. They
Sure.
liked it. It wasn't boring to them. So.
Sure. No, that's great.
Kids are awesome.
So you're talking about grade school. What do you have an age group picked out, or just?
Well, I think this book would be ideal for up to middle school.
Okay.
And even well, my granddaughter's 12. She's in the 6th grade, and she loves the book.
Okay.
Because I still read to her. She
Oh,
comes
good.
over and spends nights at our house. So I
Sure.
read to her, and she's a very brilliant girl. And she was actually a large part. I dedicate the book on the dedication page to her.
Oh,
Along
nice.
with my wife, because she inspired the book and helped. She was going to illustrate this book.
Okay.
She actually we bought her an iPad
Right.
with the art program, and she got through 3, she did the cover and 2 or 3 pages before she started playing the tuba in the school band and stuff like that. So she was all of a sudden too busy,
Right.
and I could see that I wanted to get going on the book, so
Right.
I just decided. And I might have her illustrate a book for me someday, another book. There's
Sure.
going to be more Farmer's Fast stories coming out. That's one thing I want to bring up right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like a series. This is the first in a series. I've got a list of ideas, like I'm starting on one. I actually already started on this where he's going to help Santa. So by next Christmas,
That's terrific.
you can't go wrong if he's
Yeah.
helping out Santa. So
Yeah.
that's one that's in the pipe, and but she's really great illustrator and story. She tells stories too, and you know how she got to tell them stories, because I read to her. All
Yeah,
the
you
time.
bet.
And it's amazing how kids, they're just like little sponges,
Yeah. I can't think of the fellow's name at the moment, but said that humans are hardwired for storytelling.
Right.
And in
Yeah.
fact, I guess in the history of humankind, that's how information was passed for centuries.
Yep, and I think in some areas of the world to this day, you still have that,
That's what
and
you
it
got.
ties in with the religious, religion
Sure.
has that, and culture, you know what I mean, so many things. So,
Sure.
yeah, I know, it's awesome.
Okay. Can you dig out your poem and let us
Sure.
hear that?
Yeah, you got it. Here, this is a poem I threw in right at the end, and it's kind of apropos to the subject here, and it's kind of short,
Okay.
but it's called If You're a Farmer. Is there worth to plow the earth? Yes, if you're a farmer. Is there a need to plant a seed? Yes, if you're a farmer. Who gets up before the sun? Who does more work before anyone? You, if you're a farmer. Who feeds the cow and slops the hog? Whose best friend is the loyal farm dog? You, that's who, if you're a farmer. So in conclusion, without confusion, if you like to eat, then thank a farmer.
Yeah, that's great.
So
Now, as you were reading that, do you have any farm history?
well, I got a little bit. I got some firsthand experience. Well, back where I was from, farming wasn't a thing. It was ranching.
Okay.
So ranching and farming to me are sort of the same, but I
course.
don't think they think so. But anyway, in my mind, a rancher and a farmer is about the same. So I went up with these friends of mine who owned a ranch in Buffalo, Wyoming,
Okay.
of all places. And I'm a little guy, 5
Yeah.
and 6 years old. And then maybe 7 and 8 later. But they had this fun thing where they put these kids on these small pigs and goats and ride,
Really?
ride the pigs and the goats.
Right.
And they get us up on there, and it's the funniest thing you'd ever see. Riding around on those things, they buck you off, and the kids, because the kids are watching. They were busting broncs. I mean, this is a working ranch.
Right.
They're busting broncs up there. They're branding.
Yeah.
They're docking the sheep. I mean,
I
they're
don't
doing
know
all
what that
this
is.
stuff. Yeah. Well, well, we won't go there.
All
But
right.
anyway, they're branding and cows, and they actually bring the cows in. They herd them in. The cowboys, the real cowboys. They bring the cows down from up high down to the ranch. And so then they were busting broncs there, horses, and so the kids, I remember watching these cowboys do that, and I was like, wow, yeah, that was unbelievable to see that,
Right.
And then they get us in there and put us on these goats, and you ride on a goat, and I mean, you'd fall off, but it kind of helped prove some mettle in a kid,
I think so.
It's a good thing.
It's certainly rodeo is the roughest thing I can think of. But
Those rodeo guys some of them are crazy.
yeah, we could talk about that too. But this is a somewhat rural area that we live in.
Right.
And we're sometimes involved with high school age kids, let's say, and I'm telling you, I have never been disappointed with a kid that grew up on a farm. They're self-starters. They don't wait to be told.
Right.
Uh,
They're not
they're
tied
just-
to the video screen their whole life
Yeah.
because they're out doing stuff. You know, that's
Yeah.
a refreshing thing, I tell you. And I'm not getting down on kids.
I
mean,
know.
everyone's different, but I really appreciate that. Like you, you're
Yeah.
not disappointed for the most part. So.
Yeah. No, and I think it's obvious enough that you can tell. There's a difference in the kids.
Yeah, and so we hope that I'd like to write some more. Like I say, I got some more stories involving Farmer Fast, but I'd like to also tell you that animals are kind of a thing in my writing too.
Okay.
Because I also got a series coming up, and I've already got one book almost completed, and it's going to be. It's called the Bird Series, but I think the name of it is going to be Feathered Fables.
Okay.
Okay, and it's about, and the birds have human traits, so like a fable.
Right,
You know,
sure.
animals have human traits, and they have a dilemma, and then
Right.
they have a resolution, and then they end up having, a happy ending a lot of times. So anyway, I've been working these poems, and I don't know if you've heard one before, but I've got some poems I've read before at the some of these, like the Terroir Festival.
Sure.
When we were reading there, some
Oh,
of the
yeah,
poets
sure.
were reading there. I read one there. I think it was called The Local Crow Implicated in Murder. But anyway, that was one of them, and I got some more others, about the starlings. But the cool thing of these poems are that they involve an idea that's sort of the society right now. You know what I mean?
So it's an allegory.
Yeah, it's an allegory,
Yeah.
exactly, allegorical. That's
Yeah.
right. Yep. And so I'm looking really at getting that up. That's going to be my next
Yeah.
major project. So
Good.
that-
I think about Aesop,
Oh
and-
yeah,
and,
Aesop. I need to look into that guy.
Yeah.
He was a Greek, wasn't he?
Oh, you put me on the spot. I think so.
Sounds like a
Yeah.
Greek.
It
I mean,
let's say for our
it
purposes,
seems like he was wearing a toga. When
Yeah, but I think the thing about an allegory that sometimes is you can tackle maybe distressing subjects or more difficult. Death would be one, and so if these are for children, maybe they're a little more palatable because they're a little bit removed, but you can still get the response or the morality or whatever it is that you're trying to.
Yeah, and that's what I'm hoping in a case like this. I mean, there's some serious subjects going on out there that people, have really diverse opinions on, and,
Sure.
and like immigration,
Sure.
and other stuff that we won't go into. But subjects that either cause a kind of people to,
Right.
rise up one way or another.
Right.
But for a kid, they don't always know what to think, so it's kind of good to get it out in front of their face in a maybe not such a, like the parents talking about it or whatever, or
Right.
there's, the other side where I don't, anyway, it's
a
kind
little
of nice
gentler, a little easier to take.
to, get it out there in front of them, and maybe I'll give it my view and my opinion.
Yeah, I think you can guide them a little bit. I think just presenting it, and maybe it's a springboard for them to
Right.
talk with their parents.
Springboard, that's it. So.
Yeah. something
Anyway,
like
that's one that's coming up too. So yeah, I've got a lot of projects that, I love to ride motorcycles, Stephen. You know that, and so that cuts into my riding time.
So you got writing and writing.
writing
That's
and writing.
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about his name. Is that significant? Is it just
There is
Okay,
a,
well,
a
tell-
story behind
Yeah.
that. You want to hear it?
Sure.
Okay, here's the deal. Short and D fast. At the end of the book, it comes out what the D stands for.
Okay.
Well, when I first wrote the book, the story, the D stood for damn. Because in the very first thing, he's a righteous, hardworking man. He don't cuss, he don't smoke, and he don't lie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? He don't cuss. So if his middle name is damn, he never says it.
Right.
But at the end of the book, I brought it out that his middle name was Damn, short and damn fast.
Okay.
You see that sort of connection there?
Sure.
But anyway, through the last year or so, and starting with my granddaughter and teachers that I've talked to, librarians, they said, Mike,
So you've
you
done
know,
some research.
yeah, oh yeah, I've done some research. That's right, I have. And anyway, they said, you know, you'd be better off leaving that on the table. So anyway, I changed his middle name. It's not damn, and I was going to make it darn,
Yeah.
dang. I got all these things, so you have to read the book to find out what it really is.
Okay.
But you know, my wife even said, you know, you could make it damn like DAM. But I said, you know, to a kid,
They
that
don't
don't
know,
matter.
right.
So I blew that off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
What are you gonna do?
we used to lived in another spot and went to Boulder City outside of Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's by Hoover Dam.
Yeah, right. I've been
and,
there.
And
Awesome.
they have a restaurant. I think it's a restaurant. It's the best restaurant by a dam site.
Yeah. Oh,
So-
what a play on words that is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
I see by the clock it's counting down.
We're getting close here.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing how fast it goes, you know. You're
Well,
an
and-
enjoyable fellow to talk to, Stephen.
It's well, as I've said, it's your when you're here, it's your show.
Wow.
Yeah. But is it just the one poem in there, or do you have more?
Just that one poem in this book, and the rest of it's just the story. So
Okay.
I threw the poem on the end of it. There's a new version of this book's going to be coming out, the same book.
Right.
That is going to be about 30% longer, and I'm not
Okay.
sure I need to go into the details of that, but
Okay.
you know, that's a story in itself.
Sure.
Maybe later,
All right.
if I come back here for another
Yeah.
interview, I would tell that story. But
Yeah.
it's sort of a sad story. But
Oh dear. Okay.
yeah, not sad. I'm just nothing sad. Everything's happy.
Yeah.
But it was a sort of a faux pas, my fault. You know?
Okay.
So.
I was wondering. We talked about missed opportunity. I wonder if you, after this version came out, you thought, oh, you know, there's really more to it. I really should add this second part.
No.
Okay.
It was good all the way. It's just that it was crammed into too short of a space. You're
Right.
on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know that it takes 24 pages to get a book into Amazon.
That I didn't know.
Yes. Well, e-book's different. You know, you can
Sure.
go any length, but
Yeah.
for a printed book, you got to have 24 pages.
Oh, there I learned something else.
Yeah, yeah. 24 is minimum. And that's a publishing standard. And I've looked this up numerous times. So even though I'm saying this on TV and I'm going to
Right.
be held to, I've looked it up many, many, many times.
Okay.
And so when I was going to do the book at the very beginning, when I was getting with the illustrator, I knew that. I'd already done the research, and yet somewhere along the line, I dropped the ball. And would be when she was doing the illustrations and
Yeah.
stuff, and I was matching the dialogue to the illustrations,
Right.
I dropped the ball. It kind of went right all over the top, and then so the book gets done. Well, it's not quite 24 pages, so I had to go back and do some revisiting and
Right.
dialogue dividing
Yeah.
and more artwork, which fortunately I had some art from the illustrator.
Good.
Elizabeth Berg is her name.
Sure.
Yeah, we mentioned that already, right? And
Yeah.
Gail Watson was my layout person.
Yeah.
Yeah, up in
Yeah,
Newburgh.
Gail, I've worked with both of them actually. I was the editor of the AAYC magazine, and Elizabeth did illustrations for that. And actually, my granddaughter wrote a book, and in fact, I've interviewed her here. But she wrote most of the book when she was 12, and finished it when she was 13. And Gail printed that for us.
Oh yeah, she does. She's busy right now, super busy.
Yeah.
What,
Keeps her out of trouble.
oh yeah, it does. And so I'm been up. I was just up to see her yesterday, as a matter of fact. So,
Okay.
fact is she is very busy right now with the terroir and paper gardens.
Yep.
You know, so
Those two.
yeah.
So I haven't entered Paper Gardens yet. I may, but I am presenting at Terroir.
Oh, okay.
And we'll,
Oh, good. You're going to be a presenter there.
Yeah, we'll-
Man,
we'll
good.
see how that goes.
You deserve it. You know, and by the way, while I got you on here when
Okay.
everyone's watching, your book is, I'm just almost to the end of your first book,
Oh,
and it
boy.
has been a real good ride. I
Oh.
really enjoyed it.
Thank you so
You got a
much.
way of getting into the weeds with people. You know what I mean? It's awesome. Totally. And what you read the other, what you read the other night at the Mecca.
Sure. Well, thank you.
Great.
That was a fun story.
Yeah, that was awesome.
So I will say thank you. If anybody would like to read that, it's on my website. As some short stories and poetry and so on.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say the W's, www.stephenwlong.com. And I say the W's because I've tried it without that, and it takes me somewhere else, which is
Oh.
nutty. But
Okay.
so, add that World Wide Web,
Right.
stephenwlong.com.
Right.
And do you have a website?
I do. Well, I have a Michael Paull, or it's Mike Paull at Mike Paull Works.
Okay.
That's if you type that in, Mike Paull at Mike Paull Works.
Okay.
Paul with 2 L's.
Right.
Mike Paull with 2 L's at Mike Paull Works. So
All right.
you go there, you'll find me. There's another Mike Paull, believe it or not, that's a writer that's been out there a lot longer than I have. But if you scroll down, eventually you find me.
Okay.
He's like got the first 4 or 5 spots. So.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
there you go, folks. That's two homework assignments for you.
Yeah, and there will be a quiz.
That's right. All right. That's it for today then. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Writing Life. Take care.
What do you think? We done?
I don't know, you guys wanna do one just with yourself
as
without
long
me
as
doing
they
the
think we're
bongos?
done, if
No,
they got
no.
enough, they got enough.
They got enough? Probably, okay, sounds good.
Let's go lunch. I'm
Oh.
hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could use a bite too.